Today, we're diving deep into a really interesting idea. The claim that the money sitting in your bank account, well, it might not be what you think it is. We're going to break down this argument piece by piece and explore some pretty wild concepts like fake money, God's money, and how all of this supposedly connects to why everything feels so expensive. So, let's get right into it. So, the source material we're looking at today just kicks things off with this bombshell of a question. It literally asks you to look at the cash in your wallet and question what it even is. It's a heck of a hook, right? It's designed to make you stop and think about something we all just take for granted every single day. And boom, here's the heart of the argument laid out plain and simple. The idea being presented here is that money used to be like a receipt for a real physical asset. But today's currency? Well, it's based on faith in the government that issues it. This one quote really sets the stage for the entire problem this script is trying to impact.
And hey, welcome to The Explainer. This is where we break down complex topics just by looking at the source material itself, all laid out on these slides. If you like getting straight to the good stuff, do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss our next breakdown. Now, let's get into this central idea from the source: fake money. So what on earth does the source mean by fake money? Well, it's a term that was really popularized by author Robert Kiyosaki, and the idea is basically two things. First, this money isn't tied to something real and tangible, something you can't just make more of, like gold. And second, because it can be created out of thin air, its value is pretty much designed to drop over time as more of it gets printed. This is the bedrock of the entire argument we're looking at. Now, to really understand this fake money concept, the source tells us we have to look at one specific moment in history. It dramatically calls this event the crime of 1971 and frames it as the single most important decision that completely changed the nature of our money forever. And this slide just lays it all out crystal clear. Before 1971, a US dollar was basically a claim check for a little bit of gold sitting in a vault. You couldn't just print more dollars unless you had more gold to back them up. But then, in 1971, that link was totally severed. From that day forward, the dollar wasn't backed by gold anymore. It was backed by the full faith and credit of the US government, or as the source calls it, just a promise. Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. The source makes a huge distinction between money and currency. It says that real money, like gold, holds its value because there's a limited amount of it. But currency? Well, that word comes from current, like a river. It's meant to flow, to move around, and if you try to just let your wealth sit in it, the source claims it'll just get washed away over time. And that leads to this really powerful metaphor in the script. Inflation is a silent tax. The idea is simple. As more currency gets created, every single dollar you've saved up becomes worth a little bit less. You never get a bill for it, you don't see it leave your account, but the actual purchasing power of your savings just shrinks year after year. It's why the source makes the bold claim that in today's system, savers are losers. Wow, and this chart really just puts that whole silent tax idea into stark visual terms. It shows that what a single dollar could buy you back in 1971, well, today that same dollar is worth about 15 cents. It has lost the vast majority of its purchasing power. It's a really dramatic way to show the long-term effect of the system.
Okay, so if fake money is the problem, what does the source say is the solution? This brings us to the first type of asset it points to, which it calls, and this is a very memorable term, God's money.
This table is designed to nail the core argument for gold. The source claims that 100 years ago, 1 ounce of gold could buy you a really nice men's suit. And today, that same ounce of gold can still buy you a really nice suit. But a $20 bill, which could also buy that suit back then, can barely get you a sandwich now. So the point isn't that the suit got more expensive, it's that the dollar got a whole lot weaker.
The script then breaks down the different jobs for these two metals. Gold is framed as the ultimate insurance policy, like a safety net against a currency collapse. And silver? That's called the working man's gold. It's more affordable, but it's also super important for industry, for things like solar panels and EVs. But the main principle, the absolute core idea for both, is that they're finite. You can't just print more of them.
But this isn't all about digging stuff out of the ground. The source doesn't just look to the past. It brings up a modern digital asset that it argues plays a very similar role in the 21st century. So let's take a look at the case it makes for Bitcoin. That number right there, that's the entire point. Just like gold is physically rare, the source argues that Bitcoin is digitally rare. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. That's it. That hard limit is baked into its code, and this digital scarcity is presented as its single most important quality.
So let's break down how the source positions Bitcoin. It argues that Bitcoin takes the best feature of gold, that scarcity, and then adds some huge modern advantages. It's decentralized, so no one government or bank is in charge. It's digital, so you can send it anywhere in the world, almost instantly. And its ultimate purpose, according to this framework, isn't to buy your morning coffee. It's to be a long-term store of value, a way to opt out of the traditional system.
Okay, so the script has laid out this whole problem and then presented what it sees as the solutions. But what is an ordinary person supposed to do with all this information? Well, that brings us to what it calls the wealth swap strategy.
The strategy is laid out in 3 pretty simple steps. First, it says to only keep a small emergency fund in cash, just what you need. Second, you systematically convert the rest of your savings out of what it calls fake money and into these hard assets. And third, and the source really stresses this is not about day trading. It's a long-term plan to protect your wealth from that slow, quiet decay of currency devaluation.
And that brings us to the end. The source material basically frames this whole thing as a choice. By holding currency, it argues you are a victim of its constantly increasing supply. But by holding finite assets, it claims you can become a beneficiary of their scarcity. It's a really powerful final thought, meant to make you rethink everything about where you park your wealth. Thanks for watching The Explainer. We'll see you in the next breakdown.